Hello and welcome to Afrosport Exclusive. My name is Deji Omotoyinbo. For almost 14 years, the Extreme Fighting Championship has provided intriguing fight action to combat sport enthusiasts across the continent as Africa's foremost mixed martial arts promotion company. The EFC was founded by the Howarth brothers in 2009, and today joining us right here on Afrosport TV is Cairo Howarth, who serves as the president of the EFC. Hello, Cairo. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
All right, great. So let me start like this. EFC is a company domiciled in South Africa. How would you describe yourself? An African company or a global company domiciled in South Africa?
So we're very much appealing to a global audience from a fan base point of view. Martial arts is an extremely popular sport globally, and we are one of the premium producers of the mixed martial arts content. We are focused from an Africa point of view on our athletes. So if you look at the majority of our athletes, the majority of the athletes that compete at EFC come from across Africa. So we see ourselves as an African promotion. We're effectively the premium mixed martial arts promotion on the continent, showcasing the best African athletes, but we're showcasing them to a global audience. So we have global distribution from a television, from a media, from a social distribution content point of view. So we're showcasing the best African athletes to the world.
All right, so the Made in EFC took place in 2009, if I remember correctly. So how has that growth process been this past 14 years?
It's been very interesting. Obviously, when we started back in 2009, the sport was much younger than globally, not just in Africa, but Africa specifically, it was almost non-existent. There was no television, broadcasting mixed martial arts. UFC, for example, wasn't on television. So we had to educate the fans, the African audience on what the sport is. We had to educate the media. We had to engage with corporates, with different partners, and educate them on what the sport was. So it was early days of mixed martial arts, even in a global context. It's still a very young sport globally. UFC, it's only UFC's 30th year this year. So if you think about that compared to other sports which have been around for hundreds of years, mixed martial arts is still very young. So when we started, there was nothing going on. So we had to build it up from scratch and really get it going. But it's been an amazing journey. And now, if you just see how huge the sport is today on a global, there's no one in the world that doesn't know about mixed martial arts today, that don't watch the UFC, haven't heard of Conor McGregor. Things like that have propelled the sport so much. And we've just been, building it in Africa. And as the sport grows, we continue to grow as well. The EFC brand grows and the sport grows on the continent. So it's been a very interesting 14 years, and I think it's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger.
I must commend you on the great job you've done this past 14 years. In 2014, the former EFC heavyweight champion Ron Potts moved over to the UFC, and we've seen a few since then. A lot of people will be wondering, is there a relationship between the EFC and the UFC, and what's that relationship about?
So we don't have an official relationship. We've been to many UFC shows. The UFC team have been out to watch our shows as well out here in South Africa over the years, and we see ourselves with, I'll say, unofficial. We're a feeder system for the UFC from Africa. So if you're an African athlete wanting to compete in mixed martial arts, in my opinion, every athlete that competes in mixed martial arts, their goal is to be in the UFC. It's the premium promotion. That's the highest end. It's like playing football in European football leagues, and we are that opportunity. We provide that platform for Africa and from around the world to build up their careers, to build their profile, to build up their records, and get the experience that they need and the wins that they need in order to get to UFC level and then get signed to the UFC. You see it many, many times. An EFC champion becomes a champion, defends their belt once or twice, and then gets signed to the UFC. So it's a fantastic way and opportunity for athletes, especially from Africa, in order to compete on the biggest stage in the world.
So great. That means what you do is you provide the platform for them to showcase their talents, and then UFC might pick them up somewhere down the line. Is that right?
Exactly. It's similar to the local football leagues for football. You can play in the South African Football League or the Nigerian Football League or wherever. And if you get to the top, you see the best footballers in those leagues progressing on to the Premier League or to La Liga, or German League or whatever it is. So we very much see it as the same. In order to get that experience, in order to get noticed, in order to get known around the world, in order for the UFC want to sign you, the UFC can't sign an athlete who's had one or two professional fights. They're only signing athletes who have multiple professional fights, good records, obviously put on good fights, exciting fights, and genuinely have fought at a good promotion. So what's great about EFC is we look after the athletes well, we promote them really well, we profiles, we get them well known, and obviously we look after them well from a medical view and all the other stuff that we do right. And that means when UFC signing an EFC champion, they know that they are high quality, that they've been tested high quality athletes, that they've gone through, they've done the fight camps, they've done all of that, they've done the media stuff before, so they know that they're getting a high quality athlete when they're signing someone from the EFC.
Fantastic stuff. All right, let's talk about political correctness now, gender equality. I know that a short while ago, EFC 102, Juliet Uka from Nigeria had a maiden fight. And I think you had your first female fight, I think in 2015, I think it was, Daniela Elizalde and Zita Vaju. So what's that growth process been for the female fighters in your stable?
It's been fantastic. I mean, it's harder for us to put on a pool of talent. The pool of athletes is less than the male division, so we just have less competitors in Africa than we do in the female division than we do have in the male division. So that's the reason you see less female fights at EFC. If we had the same amount of athletes, we'd be doing the exact same amount of fights. In fact, most people love watching the female fights. They put on really exciting fights. I personally think they're much tougher than the guys. The girls have a higher pain threshold. They put on these amazing wars. We love watching them, and we want to put on as many bouts as we can. It's just the limitation that we have is the depth of talent, but we're fortunate that growing, more and more female athletes are coming into the sport. So you can expect to see more and more female bouts taking EFC cards going forward.
Okay, now coming to the fighters now, both male and female. How do you source your fighters? If, for instance, I'm too old to join the EFC, but if I wanted to join the EFC, or any fighter wants to join the EFC, is it that you have relationships with individual countries across the continent? Or how do you source your fighters from across the continent, male and female?
So generally, I mean, we've got full people in our office that all they do is put together these fights and scout talent. So what normally happens is, the general way is we have relationships with managers and trainers, coaches across Africa and around the world, and generally an athlete will come from a gym that we know or have worked with before, and that trainer, we know if that trainer's, I say it the same way that the UFC knows an EFC athlete's high quality, we know which trainers are good gyms, if they put someone forward, then their level is high. They'll send us tape on them. They'll say, listen, this guy or girl's really good, XYZ, give her a chance or give him a chance. So one is, it comes through our network, if you want to call it that, and trainers that we currently work with, and managers. But on top of that, anyone is welcome to contact us any day, from social media through to send us an email. It's on our website, and you can apply to be an EFC athlete. Send us the information. This is where they fought. This is who they fought, or even if they fought in, boxing or kickboxing or jiu-jitsu or something else, they can, if they believe that they're ready to compete at the EFC, they can put themselves forward, and we can start a new relationship with them. So even if they're coming from a gym we worked with before, we're happy to work with anyone. There's no set format for it. In the end, is that guy or girl good enough to compete? Are they going to put on exciting fights? Do they have what it takes to fight? And are they a potential champion in that for?
So, but I guess there is a process whereby if I put myself forward, there's a process whereby you decide whether this person is good enough to be an EFC fighter.
Yeah, so we'll look at your record. For example, have you fought before? I'm not saying you have to have had a professional record, but you amateur fights before. Did you? What percentage did you win, lose? Are you running a long win streak or not? If you come to us and you've lost your last 4 amateur fights in a row, you're probably not. Respectfully, you're not ready to be at EFC. But if you're coming to us and you've had 10 amateur fights and you've won them all in first round knockouts, and then you haven't had a pro fight yet, but because you're coming from, Gabon or a country where they don't have a pro scene, so it's difficult for you to get matched up, cool, we understand. We'll give you an opportunity if we see that there's potential for you to get, potential future champion. You don't have to be champion level when we sign you. We understand that it's limited opportunities in Africa for an athlete to get professional fights. We're basically the only organization offering professional fights in Africa. So we understand that we're going to be signing a lot of athletes that are as not having fought professionally before. But then we're going to look at what's their martial arts background. Have they fought boxing before, or kickboxing, or Muay Thai? What else have they done? Have they done amateur fights? What level are they at? Let's have a look at some tape on them. What gym are they coming out of? So there's lots of factors that come into play, and we look at all of that, and we hope, we're looking for the next stars. We're looking for the next big thing to come out of Africa, and to showcase the best of African MMA talent. So we'll consider anyone that puts their hand up.
Okay, maybe you answered this a bit at the start. Yeah. What's your global footprint, EFC, your expansion plan? And for instance, we are one of your media partners in Africa. How wide is your media partnership? Is it global? Is it across all 5 continents? EFC content consumed all across the world at the moment?
Yeah, so it's actually been an amazing journey, the media broadcast landscape. As you know, it changes a lot over time. It started off with traditional, free-to-air and pay television, and now it's gone a lot into streaming. So our strategy is to make EFC content available to fans wherever they are in as many ways as possible. So, for example, like you say, in Nigeria, we've got multiple different ways for a fan to watch EFC, be it on Afrosport or other TV networks, pay TV and free to air, or they can watch it we stream it online, or you can watch the highlights the next day on Facebook or on YouTube. So we're trying to build the sport still. We're still building the brand. We're still showcasing the athletes. So we're trying to make it as easy for people to consume our content and watch it as possible. From an Africa point of view, we have extensive broadcast reach from pay to air to free to air, from pay TV to free to air to telcos. You can watch it on your phones via mobile networks, through to, like I said, the social media channels. And then outside of Africa, we've had and have had TV deals from South America. We just signed one recently in Brazil again, to North America, through to all over Europe and to Asia. So yeah, our content, EFC content, is distributed globally. It's watched globally. We have a massive audience. We're in a really good, space with that. There's an estimated 600-700 million fans globally, but there's frankly not enough organizations providing content for them. So if you look at, the top producers of mixed martial arts content in the world, the U.S. minus 40 shows a year. Then there's us, and then Bellator, and PFL and ONE FC. But all in all, there's, call it like 200, maybe 300 live MMA shows going out on television a year. And that's not enough. If you think of for 700 million fans, and also think about the time zones. UFC, 90% of their fight cards are in North American time zone. So, and then ONE FC is all in Asia. Hardly any in EMEA, in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So we're one of the few that's broadcasting consistently and providing MMA in a prime time for this audience. So yeah, we're in a good space from that point of view, and we see it on our social media numbers. We see it. We've had massive growth over the last 2 years. People are looking for more MMA content. As the sport grows, they want to watch more. And frankly, the UFC is amazing, but they don't provide enough content for everyone to watch it. So filling that gap, and we're seeing it across all of our metrics, with audiences increasing across the board.
Great to see that you're trying to fill in that vacuum of content. So let me ask you this: do you only host EFC events in South Africa, or have you hosted events in other parts of Africa?
At the moment, up to date, they've only been in South Africa. We have had
Is there a
multiple
plan? Is there a
discussions.
plan to host in other parts of Africa?
That is our plan for sure. It was interesting. We almost were at that point, and then obviously slowed everything down a little bit. We are in multiple discussions at the moment. Live EFC shows throughout. Watch the space. Coming to a town.
Maybe you'll come. Maybe you'll come to Nigeria. We'll welcome you, open arms. All right. Would you say that the impact of the likes of James Ngannou, the Israel Adesanya, the Nigerian Nightmare, what impact have they had on you getting fighters from the African continent?
Oh, it's been fantastic. They've been leading the way for us. They're getting more fans watching the sport, more people partaking, more people seeing that there's a career end of this, you can make big money at the end of this, even if you come from anywhere. And they've really been raising the profile for African mixed martial arts. So it's been a fantastic time for us. We're obviously big supporters of theirs, big fans of theirs, and they were the first generation to kind of break through into the high level of the UFC, but now there's going to be many, many more African athletes to follow. You're already seeing it now with Dricus du Plessis, Cameron Simon, Themba Gorimbo doing well, and a whole bunch more to come.
So let me ask you a hypothetical question. In boxing, you do have unified champions. Like WBA, WBC, you have a unified champion. Is there a plan, maybe now in the future, UFC heavyweight champion against the EFC heavyweight champion or against the PGL, something to say I'm the unified MMA champion of the world? I'm not sure that's possible yet, but could that be in the future?
Hey, it would be awesome. And, anything is possible. And as you know, in any business, and definitely in the fight business, money talks. So when there's money on the line and money to be made, then anything can happen. But up to date, the UFC don't co-promote. Some of the other guys do, like Bellator. They co-promote with Risen, which is a Japanese promotion. They do a couple shows a year together. So certainly, we're definitely not ruling it out. It comes down to the money, and it comes down to, is that a fight the fans want to see? And if it's a fight the fans want to see, then that's generally a money fight. And if it's a money fight, it's generally something that people want to put on. So I would be surprised if it didn't happen one day.
Okay, so a couple more questions before I let you go. What would you say has been EFC's greatest achievement in the last 14 years as a franchise?
I would say it's actually been the opportunity that EFC gives to the athletes and where these athletes are landing up. For example, Themba Gorimbo, perfect example. He came to South Africa from Zimbabwe. He came over the border illegally. He lived on the streets, and he got into mixed martial arts. I met him when he was must have been 16, 17. He came up to me at we did an open workout at a shopping center, and he said to me, "Cairo, one day I'm going to fight for EFC." I said, "Great." And then he did. One day he did his amateur fight, got a professional license, started fighting for EFC as a debut with us, up becoming our first Zimbabwean champion, the first Zimbabwean champion in our history. It was a huge thing. He went back home to Zimbabwe, met the president, won Sportsperson of the Year, got his own gym, started doing well, got signed to the UFC. And now you would have seen it, a viral story with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. He gifted him a house the other day and hooked him up. So I look at that, and if it wasn't for EFC, that would never have happened. Themba Gorimbo would never have got there. This wouldn't have taken place, So yes, he's put a lot. Obviously, he's done a lot, but the platform was there. It was, made it available, made it possible, should I say, which is awesome. And we've got 100 of those stories, which is fantastic. That's probably what we can be proudest of, and that's probably the biggest impact EFC has made. It's if you're coming from anywhere in Africa, you can do that. You can fulfill your dream if that's what you want to do. If you want to be a professional fighter, you want to fight in the UFC, there is a way to do it, and EFC is that way.
Fantastic. That's really a very, very good human angle story about that fighter you mentioned. And one great thing about sport is the opportunity it provides for those on the other side, on the beaten tracks of life, to express themselves in any sport that they're talented in. My final question to you, you've done 14 years. Where would you like to see EFC by the time you're 20 years on the planet?
I am keen to do more in Africa. You know, when I say do more, you know, at the moment we're showcasing the best African athletes, which is awesome. And we're seeing content for for the African market, for Nigeria, for Angola, for DRC. But it would be epic to have a live show in Nigeria and in DRC and in Angola, and I just think that would be really. I think it would be huge. I think would be blown away by just by the whole experience of it, and I think that's kind of the next evolution for us. So I'm sure we're going to get there.
Well, with what you've done in the last 14 years, I won't put it past you to make that happen sometime in the future, Cairo. I want to thank you, Cairo Howarth, EFC President, and I wish you all the best on Thursday night. Hopefully it will be a great fight between Lambert and Hlongwa. All the best for EFC 106 and all your future events. Thanks for your time on Afrosport TV.
Thank you for having me. And listen, with great partners like Afrosport, we will get this done, and we're going to continue growing the sport across the continent. So thank you for the great partnership.
Thank you. We're proud to be your partners as well. Thanks for your time. Take care.
All the best. Ciao.
All right, that was EFC President Cairo Howarth on our Afrosport Exclusive. You can watch EFC 106 and other EFC events right here on Afrosport TV. My name is Deji Omotoyinbo. Thanks for your time on Afrosport Exclusive. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.